Hello, everybody. My name is Dingo. I am a hobbyist UK hardcore producer from the United States West Coast, and this video is going to address my default template that I use for almost all of my projects. I use this template for UK Happy Hardcore, I use it for Uplifting Trance, and I also happen to use it for Breakbeat Hardcore and a couple of other genres. I try to make it translate to several genres with the intention that I would sort of solidify my workflow a little more and have it be a bit more solid and less sort of spontaneous, so I could keep track of progress better in the project, and I would avoid listening fatigue as much as possible. So in this video we're just going to talk about how I use this template, how it's formatted, and it's a sort of like brief manual. So you're going to notice right here in the project screen that you have a quick grab. This is for when I consolidate stuff, that it doesn't get routed to this one. That's the only purpose that it serves. And also sometimes the consolidations, but besides consolidations, the automations also get sent up here, and I could just grab it and drag it where I need it to go. And so that's pretty much what this track is for. After that, you're going to notice that FX, I've broken it down into several groups, and at the top of these groups, they're audio tracks. The reason for this is because I actually made this template back when I was producing on a laptop, and I'd always have to consolidate every group after I mix them because my CPU would go well over 100% trying to process everything. Even the effects, it would just boost it up like 20%. So I would go sort of like drums, consolidate that, then bass, and that. The problem is that I'd run into problems trying to simulate sidechain because the drum wasn't actually playing, and I'd use P controller all the time. So now I've taken a sort of different approach where I actually use, I go bottom up. So I mix the FX first, then the vocals, then the leads, breakdown, bass, and my drums. And that's what I tend to do now. So these audio tracks are mainly for consolidations. That reflects over here at the end. And then the next thing is that you're actually going to find different things depending on the group. So we have normal instruments or normal tracks depending on the group. You'll have normal tracks, you'll have audio tracks, and you'll also have instrument tracks. Some of which should be replaceable, some of which aren't necessarily replaceable when I use them. So we'll just go in here and show you how that carries over. I've actually organized it pretty similarly here. I was doing some testing, so this audio one is empty, but the rest here you will see in your project. So bass, breakdowns, drums, leads, and the unsorted. But here, utility, this is just a ghost sampler channel, so you can put your notes for your vocals, or not vocals, notes for the scale of your track. And then here are the vocals. This is what I was reading off of. So the vocals here, you can just drag and drop them here. I just tend to just route them here and then do the grouping in the instrument track after the fact, or I just don't pay attention at all because it really doesn't mess with my workflow. I don't use this a whole lot, to be honest with you. I'm mainly a piano roll playlist and mixer player. I rarely ever use the channel rack, unless it's to like replace something. The only time I really use it is here in bass. I've actually set it up with samplers just so it's a little more stock compatible, but you can just go here, replace, and then choose whichever synth you want. That's my workflow. I tend to just replace it based on that. So I replace it with whatever synth that I want to use, or whatever plugin VST. And then the mixer is where things start to become different because of the workflow. So what I've done here is I've set everything to mono, except for the slots that are here for your multiple reference tracks. So this one's for arrangement, this one's for mixing, this one's for sound design, and this one's just an overall reference track. And so in the mixer, these are stereo, but they've been set to 12 dB, taken down 12 dB. And then right here in these groups, you're going to find that there are multiple buses for multiple instruments. This is intentional. I've also set them all to mono because what I tend to do in my workflow is during the early stages of a project, I'll only set levels in mono and I'll do the entire arrangement in mono, just adding some slight effects here and there for the sake of the arrangement. And then after, when I start mixing, I'll just set everything to stereo. I do this for two reasons. One, it's I think gain staging it in mono helps the mono compatibility, but you also get used to like a more dull sounding version, so you aren't as like phased, you aren't as affected when you try to do like a mono compatibility check. The second reason is that it actually helps evade listening fatigue, because if you're listening to a signal in mono and then you change it to stereo, you're like, wow, this sounds, a bit deeper, but you also start noticing problems. But it isn't like problems that persist. It's like problems that you become aware of because you switch to stereo. And so you begin to mix, and you're more aware of the problems, and because of that, the listening fatigue doesn't wear you down as much, because you hear the problem, it's apparent, and you're in the mindset of, oh, I can fix this, as opposed to you're just doing it the entire time in stereo and you've had that problem throughout your sessions, and now that you're beginning to address it, you feel like there's no way. But that's just my opinion, and that's sort of like the way I look at things. And so everything is routed to a bus, and I advise you to use that to your advantage when mixing groups near the final few stages. So there's kick bus, crash bus, percussion bus, then a drum mix bus. Here is a bass bus. We've got an ambience bus or a breakdowns bus. Then we have the super saw bus, and then the lead bus. And here's just an extra space that you can use for an extra instrument track. The vocals bus and the effects bus, and then your consolidations, which I don't bus together, because that usually just, the master is the consolidation, so to speak, or the bus for the consolidations. But yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it. I'm going to include a mega link to download this in the description. And I'll go ahead and preface this by saying that you will have to download some freeware plugins. So Ozone Imager 2, Isotope, Voxango Span, this is just a custom skin, don't worry about it. It'll load regularly, it'll just probably load the preset, if anything. It'll load the span preset that I made, so not the skin. It'll look just like regular span, but my preset of separating mid and side will change things. And then I've included a useful little gain staging document that I use as a starting point. It doesn't really take into account like the loudness of samples and dynamics and things like that, but I think it's a very good starting point for those who are just starting out producing in UK happy hardcore. And from there you can get much better mixes, in my opinion. And then here I've just set a safety. I don't like things going above 0, and I'll usually cancel because my peak limits are between 6 and 3. That's where my songs tend to peak with my current gain staging. Well, it's more like from 9 to 6 now because of this, but if you follow this guide in particular, it'll be between 6 and 3. And if it goes above that, and if it goes above 0 because you accidentally forgot to turn something down, you can fall back on this soft clipper, and it'll cover you for the sake of your ears. This here is just for the sake of streaming audio, so you can actually just delete this. I'll probably just modify the actual like project template, the FLP file, and just call it a day, to be honest with you. Just get rid of this so you guys don't have to deal with that. Other than that, the last thing I wanted to explain is this Edison here. And so what happens here is that because I was producing on a laptop, what I would do is I'd consolidate the actual synthesis and then process it, because that would save resources. And so you can actually use the same trick even if you're having troubles with CPU handling. Then what you do is you just go here, you just do like a quick loop of your bass pattern, you render it out using Edison, then you bounce it off into the playlist, and you could actually drag it on here without a problem. And it'll go under the proper processing chain. You can even like insert new track and call this like bass, just like bass bounce, something like that, and get away with that too. It's up to you. It's all about choice. I try to make this like decently flexible, and yeah, this was the result that came out. Now, if you have any recommendations for this template, you think that I would be better, adjusting it, feel free to comment that down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Also, if you liked this template, be sure to share it with somebody that could use it. I have a feeling that this can translate to various genres of EDM, and not just necessarily UK happy hardcore. It's meant to be a little more flexible. But if you didn't like it, please let me know in the comments what I can do to improve it. And at the very least, I hope you learned something. All right, thanks for tuning into this tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.